Oh, this time it's serious. Welcome YouTube, my name is Nico and on this channel I'll talk about photography and filmmaking, which are not only my two passions, but also my livelihood. In previous video, I taught you the basics of photography, how to understand how your camera works, how to control your exposure, how to focus. And guess what? Well, you're starting to be good at that. Well done, mate. Assuming you don't just look at me, but you go out often to practice. But despite everything, you're here, bim bam, focusing, aperture, no worries, I get that. Well, there are still a few buttons on your camera that you never use. You're a little afraid to get close to them because you don't know what they're for. I tell you a secret. Well, it's the case of 97% of photographers, whatever their level. But trust me, at the end of this video, you will now be part of the 3%. And it's gonna rock your world. Okay, technically not maybe rock your world. In this video, we talk about lock buttons. When you press the shutter release button down halfway, two things happen. Your camera takes a measure of exposure and a focus. Okay, sorry, I will never do it again, I swear. I know it was bad, I know it. And no, not the dislike button! The lock buttons make it possible to decentralize these two actions from the shutter release button, which means that pressing down halfway won't work anymore and you'll use those two rear buttons instead. But what are you going to use this for?
When your camera is focusing, it basically uses two modes. The AFS mode, or single shoot, which means it makes the focus only once, and as long as you keep pressing on the button, it keeps the same focus. Then the AFC mode, the continuous mode, which means that as long as you keep pressing the shutter button halfway, the focus will readjust continuously, even if the subject moves in the picture.
We've already seen all of this in last week's video. If you need more details to understand, go and watch it.
The autofocus lock button is located on the back of your camera, usually reachable with your thumb, and obviously its name will depend on the brand. Just go on Google and do a quick search for back focusing button with the name of your camera to learn more, or just have a look at your user's manual.
When you press on it, and as long as you keep pressing, the focus is continuous. Once released, the focus locks on the last element in focus. But what's the point of learning to use another button if it does pretty much the same thing as the shutter release button? Why? First advantage, it allows you to switch easily between the single and continuous modes. Yes, it exists already, it's called AFA mode. But you won't find this mode in all cameras. And even here, it's not an automatic mode that decides for you. You have to choose it. Of course, you have to be in continuous mode, that's what it's there for. But as soon as you release the button, you are in single mode because the focus is now locked on the last one.
You press on it, your focus is done. Something is likely to go through the frame? No problem, your focus is locked. Your subject starts to move, you press and hold the button down. It also means that you'll be able to trigger all the time. You probably have already had the problem where your autofocus was pumping and you would press on the shutter release button, but your camera didn't let you shoot. This won't happen if you use the back button focusing.
I already told you in the previous video that I was keen on the focus framing technique, so the BFF is perfect for this technique and it's easier to use. It will not revolutionize your pictures, it's only a new way of working. Either you love it and you get addicted to it, or you feel uncomfortable with it. I don't know, I'm not walking in your shoes. It's up to you to try it again and again to see if it fits the way you work and whether you join the BFF team or not. You really have to try it, not to understand the difference. You have already understood why it is useful, but to feel the difference. It's another way of working. Exposure lock is exactly the same as what we saw earlier, but for the exposure of the image instead of the autofocus. The calculation of the exposure that will determine the values of the holy exposure triangle, aperture, speed, ISO, will be memorized by a button and will not be recalculated by the shutter release button. But before going any further, you need to understand how your camera measures exposure, since that we are barely spoken about before. Can you remember the 80% gray? Well, we won't talk about it. Here I would like to talk about the different modes available on your camera.
The evaluative metering, or whatever it's called by the brand of your camera, is the basic measurement, the one that will work more or less 80% of the time. It takes into account the entire image, makes an overall assessment, and offers you an average exposure. It will try to avoid delivering underexposed and overexposed areas. Its success rate will depend on what is called the dynamic range of your camera. In other words, its ability to correctly transcribe height and low lights. Another mode of measurement, which is time localized. The measurement isn't done on the entire image, but on a small point that only covers a small percentage of the overall image, which allows to have an accurate measurement on a particular element that you want to expose properly. If I take the same photo again with the spot metering mode, my subject will be correctly lit. Obviously, now the rest of the image will be overexposed. It's a mode that can also be used to get the opposite effect and create a silhouette by measuring on the most exposed part of the image, here on the sky. Here we deal with a mix of both. The measurement will be done on the entire image, but the camera will give more value to the center rather than the rest of the frame. It's a sort of gradient with the highest value of evaluation of the exposure as center.
It's basically the three measurement modes that most cameras have. But what do you think the common problem to all this mode is? The spot where the measurement is made, obviously. On most cameras, it's made on the center of the image. On others, the evaluation is made on the autofocus point, which makes more sense. But often, you will want to choose yourself where the exposure measurement should be done. Well, you now have a button dedicated to that.
It's called AEL on most cameras, but sometimes it's a little different. For example, on Canon cameras, they didn't even bother to give it a name. It's just a star. Thanks to it, you will be able to use the measurement framing technique. You put your subject in the center of the frame to focus, then you press the AEL button. Beautiful. Your exposure is saved and blocked, so you can reframe as you wish and trigger. It will not measure the exposition again.
Whew, yeah, it's not obvious. And today more than ever, you're gonna have to get off your ass and go outside to practice all this. It's not going to be instinctive the first time, and it's going to take a long time before you master these two magic buttons. But guess what? It's totally worth it, and it can totally change your working methods and make you even more efficient. But hey, I know you're impatient, but you're not going to run away like that, are you? And the little like to tell me that you love it, the comments to tell me again that you really love this. And while you're here, and only if you are interested in awesome tutorials about photography and filmmaking, you can subscribe and click on the bell to never miss any of the upcoming videos, which are coming very soon. See you, mate. Keep on creating.